The hospital room was silent in a way that didn't feel natural. Not peaceful, not calm, empty. He stood near the window, still wearing the same suit he had arrived in hours earlier. The fabric was creased now, the confidence it once carried, replaced by tension he couldn't control. Outside, the city moved like nothing important had happened. Cars passed, people laughed, life continued. Inside that room, time had stopped. The billionaire was used to control. Control over meetings, control over numbers, control over outcomes. But there were moments in life where no amount of power, money, or influence mattered. This was one of them. The nurse entered first. She didn't meet his eyes. That alone told him something was wrong. Behind her came his wife. She was pale, too pale. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her hands trembling slightly as she held them together at her waist. She avoided his gaze too, staring instead at the floor, as if the tiles could absorb what she was about to say. He stepped forward instinctively. "Where is he?" he asked. His voice was steady, almost calm. She swallowed, then whispered the words that would divide his life into two parts. He didn't make it. The sentence was short. 4 words. No explanation, no warning, no room for questions. For a moment, he didn't understand. Not because the words were unclear, but because his mind rejected them. "What do you mean?" he asked. The nurse spoke quickly, too quickly, as if reciting something memorized. "There were complications during delivery. We did everything we could." He looked at his wife. She nodded. Tears finally escaped her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said. That was when the air left his lungs. Not dramatically, not violently. It simply disappeared. He sat down slowly, as if afraid his body might collapse if he didn't. A son. He had been preparing for this moment for months. The nursery at home was ready. The name had been chosen. The future mapped. And now, in the space of a few seconds, it was all gone. "Can I see him?" he asked quietly. The nurse hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. But he noticed. "I'm afraid that won't be possible. The doctors advise against it." His wife reached for his hand. He didn't pull away, but he didn't squeeze back either. The burial happened 2 days later. Closed casket. Private. Quiet. People spoke softly, as if sound itself might offend the dead. They offered condolences. They used careful language. "He's in a better place. You'll heal with time. You're strong." He nodded when expected, thanked people politely, but none of the words reached him. That night, he stood alone in the nursery, the small bed untouched, the walls painted in neutral tones, a room that had never known life. He stayed there for hours, sitting in the dark, not crying, just breathing. Something inside him shut down that night. Not completely, but enough that the man who walked out of that room was not the same man who had entered. His wife changed after that too, but in a different way. She returned to routine faster than he expected. Too fast. Within weeks, she was attending events again, hosting dinners, smiling. She avoided conversations about the baby. When he brought it up, her responses were brief. "It's better not to dwell. We need to move forward. There's nothing we can change." He tried to believe her, tried to convince himself that grief looked different for everyone. But there were things that didn't sit right. The hospital never sent follow-up documents. No official death certificate arrived at their home. When he asked, his wife said she had handled everything. "It was too painful," she explained. "I didn't want you to relive it." He accepted it, because at the time, questioning her felt like reopening a wound he wasn't sure he could survive. Years passed. The empire grew. The billionaire became more powerful than ever. But the man himself grew quieter. He never had another child, never tried. Sometimes, late at night, he imagined what his son would have looked like. Would he have his eyes, his posture, his calm way of listening? Those thoughts always ended the same way, with silence. What he didn't know, what no one had ever told him, was that while he had been standing in that hospital room, believing he had lost a child, that child had been breathing, crying, alive. And somewhere in the city, a decision had been made. A decision that would take 18 years to undo. Grief doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes it looks like discipline. In the years following the funeral, the billionaire became known for something new. Not ambition, not aggression, control. He worked longer hours, spoke less, listened more. Meetings ended faster. Decisions were sharper. People said the loss had changed him. They were right, but not in the way they thought. He built the empire higher than ever. Acquisitions, expansions, influence. But he stopped celebrating victories. There were no champagne toasts, no late-night laughs, only quiet efficiency. At home, the house felt finished, not lived in, finished. The nursery was never repurposed, never discussed. The door stayed closed. His wife adjusted easily. That was the part he never fully understood. She traveled, socialized, redefined herself. When people offered condolences years later, she responded with polished composure. "It was a long time ago," she'd say. "We've healed." He nodded when she said it. But healing, he learned, wasn't something you declared. It was something you lived. At night, he sat alone in his office, staring at old financial projections that no longer mattered. And in those quiet moments, the thought returned. If he had lived, 18 years passed like that, quietly. Across the city, another life unfolded, very differently. The boy grew up in a small apartment. Not poor, not comfortable, just limited. He was adopted legally, on paper, but nothing about his beginnings was simple. The couple who raised him were kind, but distant. They loved him, but never explained where he came from. Every time he asked, the answers changed. "You were very wanted," they said. "Your past doesn't matter. What matters is who you become." He accepted that explanation for years, but something never settled. He didn't look like them, didn't sound like them, didn't think like them. He was observant, quiet, too mature for his age. Teachers described him as detached but intelligent. Friends said he listened more than he spoke. At night, he dreamed of places he'd never been, of rooms he couldn't describe, of a man he couldn't see clearly. He never told anyone about those dreams. By 18, he was working. Not because he wanted to, because he needed to. His first job was ordinary, nothing remarkable, but he took it seriously. Always on time, always respectful, always careful. One afternoon, fate began to move. Subtly, cruelly. The billionaire attended a small charity event. Low profile, minimal press. He didn't like crowds anymore. The boy was there too, working, serving, unnoticed. They passed each other in a hallway. No words, no recognition. But both slowed their steps, just for a moment. The billionaire turned. Something about the young man unsettled him. Not familiarity, not resemblance, recognition. He dismissed it, a coincidence, a projection. The boy felt it too, a strange pull, as if he had just walked past a memory. That night, the billionaire couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the young man's face, the posture, the eyes. His wife noticed his distraction. "Long day?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "Nothing more." Days later, their paths crossed again. Then again. Different places, different circumstances, always briefly. Each time, the feeling returned. Stronger, more uncomfortable. The billionaire began asking questions. Not directly, quietly. Events? Who managed logistics? Who hired staff? Names passed his desk. None stood out, until one did. The boy's name stopped him. Not because he recognized it, but because something about it felt wrong. Incomplete. That same week, an elderly nurse sat alone in her small apartment, watching the news. She saw the billionaire's face on the screen. Older now, sharper. Her hands trembled. She turned off the television. She had been waiting 18 years for this feeling. Guilt doesn't disappear. It sleeps. And now it was awake. The truth had survived, and it was moving. Unaware of each other, three lives began drifting toward the same point. A man who buried a child, a boy who never knew where he came from, and a woman who had lied so well that even time believed her. The meeting was no longer a matter of chance. It was inevitable. The first real conversation happened by accident. At least that's what it looked like. The billionaire had stayed late after the event. Paperwork, silence, habit. He disliked small talk, always had. But that night, something pulled him out of his routine. The young man was still there, cleaning up, quiet, focused, methodical. "You don't need to stay this late," the billionaire said casually, almost without thinking. The boy looked up, surprised, then nodded politely. "I'll finish soon, sir. Sir." The word landed heavier than it should have. "What's your name?" the billionaire asked. The boy answered. The sound of it stirred something uncomfortable. Not memory. Instinct. "How old are you?" the billionaire asked next, immediately regretting how personal it sounded. 18, the boy replied. After a pause, he added, "Almost 19. The billionaire nodded, as if doing math he didn't want to finish. They stood there in silence for a moment. Neither moved. Neither knew why. "Do you enjoy this work?" the billionaire asked. The boy considered the question carefully. "I don't hate it," he said honestly. "Focus." "On what?" "On what's in front of me," the boy replied. "Not on what's missing." The billionaire felt his chest tighten. They spoke again days later, then again. Never long conversations, but real ones. The boy asked questions no one else asked, about responsibility, about power, about what a person owes the world. The billionaire answered without realizing how much he was revealing. "You don't seem impressed by money," the billionaire observed once. The boy smiled faintly. "I've seen what it does to people," he said, "even when they don't have it." That answer stayed with him. Over time, the billionaire began to notice patterns. The way the boy listened without interrupting. The way he processed before responding. The calm under pressure. The same traits he recognized in himself. Noticed the change. "You've been distracted lately," she said. He didn't deny it. "Just thinking," he replied. "About what?" she asked. "About choices," he said simply. She watched him closely, said nothing. But something tightened behind her eyes. The nurse couldn't sleep. Not anymore. She had followed the boy's life from a distance. Carefully. Anonymously. She told herself it was concern. It was guilt. When she saw him standing beside the billionaire at an event on television, her breath caught. That was the moment she knew. The collision had begun. She requested a meeting. Not officially. Quietly. The billionaire was confused at first. Then cautious. Then curious. They met in his office. Late afternoon. Sunlight fading. "I don't have much time," he said politely. "Take much," the nurse replied. Her voice trembled, despite her effort to control it. She placed a folder on his desk. Worn. Old. I was on duty the night your son was born, she said. The billionaire froze. Not visibly, but completely. My son is dead, he said calmly. She swallowed. No, she said. He wasn't. The room went silent. She explained slowly, every word deliberate, every sentence an admission. The emergency, the pressure, the payment, the adoption. She said you wouldn't want him, the nurse whispered, that it would ruin everything. The billionaire didn't speak, didn't move, didn't breathe. Where is he? He asked finally. The nurse looked down. You've already met him. The billionaire closed his eyes, just for a moment. Alone. Processing 18 stolen years. 18 birthdays. 18 chances. When he looked at the boy again the next day, everything was different. And nothing was. He didn't tell him. Not yet. He watched, listened, waited. Because the truth was no longer just his. It belonged to the boy. And timing would decide whether it healed or destroyed. The wife felt it. The shift. The danger. She asked one last question that night. Are you hiding something from me? The billionaire looked at her, longer than usual, then answered, yes. And for the first time in 18 years, she was afraid. The truth was not revealed in a single moment. It unfolded, carefully, painfully. The billionaire didn't rush. He didn't call the boy into his office and drop the truth like a weapon. He had learned long ago that timing could be as powerful as honesty. Instead, he changed the way he listened, the way he looked, the way he stayed. They spent more time together, not intentionally, naturally. The boy began asking deeper questions, questions that had nothing to do with work. Do you believe people are defined by where they come from? He asked one evening. The billionaire paused. No, he said. I believe they're defined by who stays when things are hard. The boy nodded, as if that answer filled a space he didn't know how to describe. The wife noticed everything. The longer conversations, the silence at dinner, exchanged without explanation. She confronted the billionaire one night. Not angrily, precisely. You know, she said. He didn't ask what she meant. Yes, he replied. Her composure cracked. Then you know I had no choice. You always had a choice, he said calmly. You just chose control. She laughed bitterly. You think he'll forgive you when he knows, she asked. When he realizes you let him live a lie? The billionaire met her gaze. I didn't let him live a lie, he said. I let him live. The next day he invited the boy to dinner. Just the two of them. No staff. No interruptions. The boy sensed something immediately. You look serious, he said. I am, the billionaire replied. They ate quietly. Then the billionaire placed a small envelope on the table. Not the DNA results. Photograph. The boy picked it up. It showed a hospital room. Years old. A newborn in a blanket. That was taken the day you were born, the billionaire said. The boy's hands began to tremble. I don't understand, he said. The billionaire spoke slowly, carefully. Truth without cruelty. He told him everything. The birth, the lie, the years stolen. The boy didn't interrupt, didn't cry, didn't raise his voice. When the story ended, the silence felt endless. So, you're my father, the boy said quietly. The billionaire shook his head. I am someone who should have been, he said, but wasn't allowed to be. The boy looked at him, eyes full of questions. Did you want me? He asked. The billionaire didn't hesitate. Every day. That was when the boy broke. Loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. I thought something was wrong with me, he said. That I was easy to leave. The billionaire reached across the table, took his hand. You were never left, he said. You were taken. The wife tried to intervene, tried to control the narrative, but it was too late. The boy refused to see her, not out of hatred, out of clarity. Legal proceedings followed, not loud, not public, efficient. The billionaire restructured everything: trusts, assets, protections. When the time came, he didn't ask the boy what he wanted. He gave him the choice. "You can walk away," he said. "You owe me nothing." The boy shook his head. "I don't want the money," he said. "I want the truth." The billionaire smiled. "That's how I know you're ready." Past. The boy studied, learned, built his own life. The billionaire grew older, weaker, but lighter. On his final day, the boy sat beside him, holding his hand. "You didn't lose me," the boy whispered. "They just delayed us." The billionaire smiled, closed his eyes, at peace. The will was read quietly. No spectacle. Everything went to the son. Not because of blood, but because of intention. The wife received enough to live, but never enough to control. The son didn't seek revenge, didn't expose, didn't punish. He did something harder. He lived well. And in doing so, he proved something the lie never could destroy. Family is not who claims you. It's who chooses you. They told him his son was dead. Understood. Was that the bond? Never was.